Happiness used to feel like something out ahead of you, until life taught you it was something you grow into. This is for the version of me who understood happiness in theory, but needed years of living to learn how to actually practice it. I used to believe happiness lived somewhere in the distance, in milestones I hadn't reached, in things I hadn't earned, in a life I hadn't built yet. When I was young, I looked outward for it, watching what other people had and assuming it was the key to feeling complete. I thought I'd be happy once I arrived at the place where everyone else seemed to be standing. And when I was just starting out, that didn't feel unreasonable. My life was beginning. Responsibilities were new. The world felt big, and I felt small inside it. But even then, something in me understood happiness more deeply than I realized. I can still see the words I wrote as a teenager. The poems, the letters, the thoughtful little notes about joy and meaning. I had such a clear grasp of the philosophy of happiness before adult life swept in and filled my attention with other things. Back then, I understood what mattered. But once I stepped into adulthood, that early wisdom got lost beneath everything I was trying to build. Life became louder than meaning. Doing became louder than feeling. And I let the most important truths become background noise while I chased what I thought I was supposed to want. I didn't lose sight of happiness on purpose. I just thought I'd get back to it later. I assumed life would eventually settle down long enough for me to remember what mattered. Then midlife came, and something shifted. I started to notice that happiness wasn't only about what I had. It was also about what I could create for others. I began to measure joy through the eyes of the people closest to me. Their comfort, their laughter, their security. I had a hand in those things. And watching them thrive made something in me feel fulfilled in a way achievements never had. But even then, there was a quiet ache under the surface, a whisper that sometimes sounded like, "Is this all there is?" Not in a hopeless way, but in a way that hinted at some missing piece of myself. I was caring for others, but not always caring for me. I was creating happiness around me, but not necessarily within me. And still, I kept going. I kept giving. I kept measuring my worth by what I could offer instead of what I could feel. Midlife taught me the beauty of making others happy, but it didn't yet teach me how to let happiness belong to me too. It wasn't until later, in the quieter seasons of life, that I finally had the space to come back to myself. Life slowed enough for me to hear my own thoughts again, to remember the girl who once wrote so clearly about joy, to recognize the parts of me I had set aside while building a life. And in that stillness, I began to understand happiness differently. Not as something external, not as something earned, not as something reflected only in the well-being of others, but as something cultivated from within. I realized there was a simple truth I had never fully let myself believe. I mattered too. The words "everyone has need of you" had lived in my mind for years, but they had never made it all the way into my heart. Only recently did I begin to feel their truth. Not because someone said them, but because life finally gave me the quiet to see my own impact. And it was in that realization that something softened. I started treating happiness not as a reward, but as a practice. Not as something that would arrive at the end of effort, but as something I could nurture in small ways every day. This was the turning point, the moment where I finally became ready to talk to you. Because now what I want more than anything is for you to understand this sooner than I did. You don't have to wait until the end of your life to feel whole. You don't have to spend years chasing happiness or giving it all away without keeping any for yourself. You don't have to lose sight of your worth just because life gets busy or loud or demanding. You can begin now, in the season you're in, to find value in yourself. To let the love you extend to others extend inward too. To see that you are needed, not for what you produce, but for who you are. You can begin now to recognize how happiness grows from the inside, from gentleness, from belonging, from choosing to believe you matter, from noticing the ways you light up the lives of people around you. Your happiness isn't ahead of you. It isn't behind you. You don't need to wait for later. You don't need a crisis or a transition or a major milestone. You can begin your own happiness story now, one small moment at a time, starting exactly where you are. Signed, the me who learned happiness slowly and wants you to be able to find it sooner. P.S. Tell me in the comments, when did happiness first start to feel real for you? And if someone you care about needs a quiet moment of reflection today, feel free to share this letter with them.